Elias had always lived a quiet life, and most days he believed this was the only life meant for him. He woke before sunrise, fed the animals, fixed whatever needed fixing, and ate simple meals in silence. The small wooden house he lived in was peaceful, but empty. There were no voices inside it, no laughter, no footsteps except his own. He had grown used to it, but even he knew that the silence sometimes felt heavier than any chore on the ranch over the years. People in town often asked why he never married. Elias would only smile politely and shrug. He wasn't the kind of man who talked too much. He felt uncomfortable showing himself to others, and he had never been good at getting attention. Loud men filled the saloons, bragging about their adventures, boasting about their strength, and competing over women. Elias didn't fit in with them. He preferred listening over speaking, thinking over shouting, hard work over loud talk. But loneliness had its own way of knocking on the door, especially during long evenings. After finishing all his chores, he would sit on his porch and watch the sun sink behind the hills. The light would fade, and the cold evening wind would remind him that he had no one to share the quiet moments with. Sometimes he wondered if maybe it was too late, if the world simply didn't have someone who would understand a man like him. It was an old neighbor who finally convinced him to try something new. The neighbor told him about a mail-order bride service, where women from faraway places wrote letters to men hoping for a new start in America. At first, Elias refused. The thought of writing to a stranger made him nervous. But after weeks of thinking, he found himself sitting at his small table with a pen in his hand, trying to explain who he was. He didn't lie. He didn't try to sound impressive. He simply wrote the truth. He wrote that he was a quiet man who worked from morning to night. He wrote that he wasn't rich, but he was steady and honest. He wrote that he didn't know how to be charming, but he knew how to take care of people. He also wrote that he hoped to find someone who wouldn't mind a quiet home, simple meals, and days filled with hard work. When he sent the letter, he expected nothing. He almost forgot about it until an envelope arrived with a bold, confident handwriting on the front. The woman's name was Anya. Her writing was strong and firm, just like her words. She explained she came from a northern village, a place where winters were harsh and people had to be even stronger to survive. She said she had worked since she was young, carrying heavy loads, tending to animals, and helping her family through difficult seasons. She didn't hide the truth. She wrote that she was tall, strong, and not like the delicate women many men preferred. But she also said she had a soft heart, even if she didn't always show it. And then she wrote one sentence that stayed in Elias's mind for days. I want a man who lives with kindness, not noise. For the first time in years, Elias felt a small spark in his chest. He wrote back. Then another letter came. Soon, they were exchanging letters every week. The more they shared, the more he felt hope returning. After months of writing, she agreed to come. She said she was ready for a new life. She believed Elias was the right man to build it with. When the day finally came, the town grew curious. Word spread that Elias's bride was arriving on the stagecoach, and many people gathered near the dusty road just to see. Elias stood quietly near his wagon, hands shaking a little. He had imagined her many times, but he still wasn't prepared for what happened next. The stagecoach rolled to a stop, the horses breathing hard after the long journey. The door opened, and the first person to step down was the driver. Then came a heavy trunk, large enough to hold a lifetime's worth of belongings. And then, slowly, a woman emerged. She stepped onto the ground with steady feet and looked around calmly. The crowd whispered instantly. Anya was taller than Elias had expected, taller than most men in town. She had broad shoulders, long arms, and a posture that showed strength without trying. Her hair was tied neatly, and her clothes were simple but clean. She carried herself with confidence, not aggression. Her eyes were calm and sharp, taking in the town with quiet interest. Elias felt his breath catch. He wasn't intimidated, but he was surprised. He had imagined someone strong, but not like this. She looked like someone who had lived through storms and risen stronger from them. She turned her head, saw Elias, and smiled, not a small, polite smile, but a warm one that reached her eyes. "You must be Elias," she said, her voice steady and rich. "I recognize you from your letters." Elias swallowed, nodded quickly. then almost forgot how to speak. "Yes, I'm Elias. Welcome." She stepped closer, towering over him by almost a full head. But there was no arrogance in her gaze, only curiosity, only warmth. "I hope you are not disappointed," she said softly. Elias opened his mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then he shook his head. "No," he said finally. "Just surprised?" She laughed, not loudly, but with a genuine sound that eased some of his nervousness. She lifted her huge trunk as if it weighed nothing and placed it in his wagon before he could even offer help. The townsfolk watched in disbelief. Some whispered, some chuckled, some raised their eyebrows. But Elias didn't care about their opinions. He was too focused on the woman who had crossed an ocean and traveled miles just to start a life with him. The ride back to the ranch was quiet, but comfortable. Anya sat beside him, hands resting calmly in her lap. She looked around at the open fields, the wide sky, and the distant mountains. "It is beautiful here," she said softly. Elias nodded. "It's simple, but peaceful." "That is what I want," she replied. "Peace. A place where I do not have to prove myself every minute." He looked at her for a moment, surprised by the emotion in her voice. "Did you have to prove yourself a lot back home?" She smiled faintly. "More than you can imagine." The wind blew across the fields, brushing past them like a quiet greeting. Elias stole small glances at her as he drove. He noticed the strength in her hands, the softness in her eyes, and the calm she carried despite her size and presence. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. When they reached the ranch, Elias felt nervous again. He wasn't sure what she would think of his small home. It wasn't fancy or large. It was plain and built with his own hands. But when she stepped inside, she smiled warmly. "It feels like a good place," she said. "A home with honest walls." Elias wasn't sure what honest walls meant, but the way she said it made him feel proud. She examined the kitchen, the small living room, the bedroom, and the porch. She touched nothing, only looked with interest. "You have lived alone a long time," she said. "Yes," he answered quietly. "Too long, maybe?" She turned to him, her expression gentle. "Not anymore." Those simple words made something inside him shift. Something like warmth, something like hope. The sun was lowering, turning the sky golden. Elias helped her unload her trunk, though she could have easily done it alone. She allowed him to take one side, and together they carried it inside. She didn't rush him or correct him. She treated him like a partner, not someone to outshine. After everything was brought inside, they stood on the porch for a moment, watching the sunset together. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Elias felt a strange mixture of nervousness and comfort. Anya was bold, strong, and full of life. He was quiet, calm, and steady. They were different in many ways, yet something about her presence settled perfectly into the empty spaces of his quiet world. As the light faded, Anya looked at him with a calm smile and said, "I came here ready to build a life. I hope we build it together." Elias felt his heart beat harder than usual, but he nodded slowly. "Yes," he said softly. "Together." And so their story began, not with perfect ease or romantic speeches, but with honesty, hope, and the first gentle steps of two very different people trying to understand each other. The first morning after Anya arrived, Elias woke up earlier than usual. He expected to see her still asleep, but when he stepped outside, he found her already awake, standing in the cool morning air. She wasn't resting or stretching. She was lifting a heavy wooden beam that had fallen beside the barn weeks ago. Elias had left it there because it was too heavy for one man to carry. But Anya held it steady and moved it as if it were no trouble at all. She looked over her shoulder and smiled. "Good morning, Elias." He blinked in surprise, half awake and unsure if he was dreaming. You didn't have to do that." "I like to start my day with work," she replied calmly. "It keeps my hands busy." Elias nodded slowly, still trying to understand this new part of his life. He wasn't used to sharing his morning routine with anyone, but there was something comforting about seeing another person awake with him, especially someone who seemed to enjoy helping. They spent the early hours feeding the animals. Anya watched how he handled things, then joined in smoothly, as if she had done the same tasks her whole life. She moved gracefully despite her size, and she seemed to understand animals quickly. A skittish young horse backed away from Elias but walked straight to her, letting her pet its head gently. "You're good with them," Elias said softly. "Animals speak with feelings more than words," Anya answered. "If you are calm, they feel it." The day continued with both of them working side by side. She helped mend fences, chop firewood, and clear a patch of overgrown weeds near the creek. She never complained, never slowed down. But even with her strength, there were moments when Elias saw something softer in her. Sometimes, when a bird sang nearby or a breeze passed through the trees, she would pause and close her eyes, as if remembering something far away. Elias wondered often what her life had been like before she came. Her letters told some things, but not everything. There were still stories inside her that she kept hidden, and he didn't want to push her before she felt ready. That evening, Elias cooked a simple meal: beans, bread, and roasted vegetables. He worried it wasn't enough, but Anya ate with quiet appreciation. "It is warm and honest," she said. "A good meal." He smiled shyly and looked away. Compliments were rare for him, and even rarer was someone who meant them sincerely. After dinner, they sat on the porch. The sky was orange and pink, slowly turning to deep blue. Crickets hummed softly in the grass. Elias felt tired but peaceful, and he was glad Anya seemed comfortable. She looked at the horizon and said, "This place feels like a new beginning." "Do you miss your home?" Elias asked. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched a group of birds fly across the sky. "I miss some things," she finally said, "but not everything. My home was beautiful, but it was also difficult. People expected strength from me every day. They expected me to carry loads, solve problems, and stand firm even when I was tired." Elias listened carefully, his eyes soft. "Here," she continued, "I do not feel judged. You accept me as I am." Elias swallowed gently. "I only want you to feel safe here." She looked at him with quiet gratitude. "I do." From then on, each day brought new moments of learning about each other. Elias discovered that Anya hummed softly when she cooked, using melodies from her childhood. She discovered that Elias checked the doors twice each night, not out of fear, but out of habit from years of living alone. She found it thoughtful, a sign that he always wanted his home to be safe. One afternoon, Elias noticed that the old barn door was loose. He tried to fix it, but the hinge was too rusted. Anya stepped forward. "Let me help." He stepped back, expecting her to simply hold the door. Instead, she lifted the entire door off its hinges with one smooth motion. Elias stared, mouth slightly open. Anya laughed quietly. "It is only a door, Elias." But to him it was more than a simple action. It was a reminder that Anya carried strength in her body as easily as others carried a small bag. Yet she never used that strength to make him feel small. She only used it to help. The town, however, noticed her strength too, and not everyone reacted kindly. People whispered behind their backs whenever they came to buy supplies. Some men were amused, some uncomfortable, and some tried to hide their envy. But Elias and Anya pretended not to hear. One day, while they were in town, a group of cowhands standing near the general store began talking, loudly so the couple could hear. "I heard she can lift a wagon by herself," one man said mockingly. "Maybe she should marry all of us. Too, she can carry the whole crowd." Another added, "I bet that quiet rancher doesn't know what to do with a woman like that." Elias tensed, but he kept his eyes down. He wasn't the kind of man who fought or raised his voice. He just wanted to buy supplies and go home. Anya simply looked at the men calmly. Her expression didn't change. She didn't look angry or embarrassed. She looked like someone who had heard worse in her life and learned not to let it break her. But later that afternoon, when they were far from town, Elias apologized softly. "I'm sorry they talk like that." She shook her head. "They talk because they don't understand. I am not offended." "But they shouldn't, Elias," she said gently. Turning toward him, "Your opinion matters to me. Their voices do not." He fell silent, touched by her words. He realized she truly didn't care about gossip. and she respected him more deeply than he expected. Another day, while clearing debris near the barn, they found a young calf stuck between two fallen branches. It was frightened, kicking its legs helplessly. Elias tried to pull the branches apart, but they were too heavy. Anya knelt beside him. "Let me try." She placed her hands under the thick wood and lifted it slowly. Her muscles tightened, but she didn't struggle. Elias guided the calf out, holding it steady as Anya moved the branches aside. The calf nuzzled her hand afterward, calming quickly under her gentle touch. "You're good at this?" Elias said softly. "I have cared for animals since I was young," she replied. "They only need patience." As days turned into weeks, the house slowly began to feel different. The empty spaces were filled with warmth, her voice, her footsteps, her presence. She fixed his worn shirts, sewed new curtains for the kitchen, and even placed wildflowers in a small jar on the table. Elias had never thought about flowers before, but seeing them made the room feel alive. One rainy evening, the sky was dark and the wind rattled the windows. Anya sat at the table writing a letter to her family. Elias sat across from her, polishing a lantern. The thunder echoed loudly, and for a moment, the room fell silent except for the rain. Without looking up, Anya said softly, "Elias, why did you really choose to write to me?" He paused, unsure if he should speak honestly, but something in her tone encouraged him. "I wrote because I was tired of eating dinner alone. I was tired of walking around this house and hearing nothing. And I wanted someone who didn't need loud words. Someone who understood a quiet life." Anya slowly set her pen down. Her eyes looked warmer than ever. "That is why I came," she whispered. "Not for the land. Not for the room or the food. But for someone who lives with gentleness." Elias felt something shift again inside him, a feeling he wasn't used to, something like hope. Something like connection. They listened to the rain for a long time. No words were needed. By the end of the second month, they were no longer strangers trying to understand each other. Their days were filled with small moments of kindness. They carried heavy loads together. They ate together. They worked side by side. And little by little, they started building a bond without forcing it or rushing it. One night, after finishing dinner, Anya placed a neatly folded jacket on Elias's bed. It was his old barn jacket, torn in many places and almost falling apart. He had meant to fix it for years, but never got around to it. Now, it looked almost new. He picked it up and looked at her quietly. She stood near the doorway watching him. "You fixed it?" he asked softly. She nodded. "You wear it every day. It should be strong." Elias didn't know what to say. The simple act touched him more deeply than she realized. Small acts like this, simple words, shared work, and peaceful evenings slowly brought them closer. Their home began to feel fuller, warmer, more alive. By the time the season started to turn, Elias knew one thing with certainty. Life with Anya was changing him. She was strong in ways he never expected, gentle in ways most people never saw, and patient in everything she did. And she was becoming a part of his life in a way he hadn't even dared to imagine. Trouble arrived slowly, like a cloud forming far away before anyone noticed it was turning into a storm. At first, Elias and Anya lived their days in quiet routine. They worked together, ate together, and talked more than before. Elias found himself relaxing around her, speaking more freely, and even smiling without feeling shy. Anya seemed calmer too, as if the wide land and peaceful days gave her room to breathe. But peace rarely stayed untouched. In town, people talked. Some whispers were simple curiosity, but others carried mockery or doubt. They had never seen a woman like Anya tall, strong, confident, and they had never seen someone like Elias with someone like her. People liked what they understood. Anything different became a story to repeat, twist, or laugh at. One afternoon, Elias needed supplies from the general store. Anya went with him because she wanted to buy thread and cloth for sewing curtains. As they walked through town, Elias felt the stares. Some were simply surprised. Others were not kind. Still, Anya kept her chin raised, unberated. Inside the store, Elias picked up feed and tools while Anya searched through fabrics. A group of cowhands entered, laughing loudly. At first, they didn't notice the couple, but the moment they saw Anya, their laughter turned into murmurs. "Look who's here," one of them said. "The giant bride." Another snickered. "I heard she carries him around the ranch instead of the other way around." Elias felt heat rise in his cheeks. His hands tightened around the feed sack. He didn't usually confront anyone, but his chest felt heavy. Anya pretended not to hear, but her shoulders stiffened slightly. One man stepped closer, leaning against the counter. "Tell us, big lady, do you do all the work at home? Or does your quiet husband just sit and watch?" Elias opened his mouth but found no words. His heart pounded. He hated being watched, hated being laughed at, but worst of all, he hated that Anya was being disrespected. Anya turned slowly, her expression calm but serious. "We work together," she said. "We respect each other." The man smirked. "Respect? I bet you could pick him up with one hand." Anya didn't react. Instead, she held Elias's gaze for a moment, silently checking if he wanted to leave. He felt embarrassment crawl through him, but he shook his head gently. He didn't want to run away like a scared boy. They finished shopping and left quietly. But Elias could tell Anya felt something heavy inside, the way her steps slowed just a little. When they reached the wagon, she placed the items neatly in the back and stood for a moment without speaking. "I am sorry," Elias said softly. Her eyes lifted, surprised. Why? They shouldn't say those things. She shook her head. "They spoke from ignorance. Their voices do not shape my life." "But still," he whispered, "you don't deserve that." Anya placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Do not blame yourself. You have done nothing wrong." Elias wanted to believe her, but a part of him wondered if he should have said something, done something, stood up for her. He felt ashamed for letting the moment pass. The next weeks passed with more whispers, more glances, sometimes harmless, sometimes cruel. Anya stayed calm, always focused on the ranch. Elias tried to ignore the people, but he couldn't ignore the small sting he felt whenever someone mocked them. Then, one warm afternoon, trouble became more than whispers. Elias and Anya went to town again because the ranch needed nails, rope, and new sacks for storing grain. As they stepped out of the store, the same cowhands from before were leaning against a tree nearby. The men were louder today, drinking and laughing, when Anya and Elias walked past. One of them stepped forward. "Well now," he said, arms crossed. "If it isn't our favorite pair." Elias lowered his gaze and kept walking. But the man blocked their path. "You're strong, right?" he said to Anya. "Show us. Lift one of us, maybe?" Anya didn't speak. She stepped slightly to the side, trying to continue walking, but another man moved in, grinning. "Where are you going, big girl?" "We're just having fun." Elias felt his heart beating fast. He hated confrontation, but he couldn't stay silent anymore. "Let us pass," he said quietly. One of the men laughed. "Oh, look," the quiet rancher found his voice. The situation shifted quickly. One cowhand reached out foolishly and grabbed Anya's arm. The second his fingers touched her, her posture changed. She didn't shout. She didn't push. She simply straightened and gave him a look so calm and severe that the man froze. His hand dropped instantly, as if he had touched fire. "Do not touch me," Anya said in a low, steady voice. The man stepped back, embarrassed. His friends muttered under their breath, and then it happened. Elias stepped forward. He wasn't loud. He didn't raise his fists. He simply positioned himself between Anya and the men, shoulders squared, eyes steady. "Enough," he said firmly. "Leave us alone." The men laughed, but their laughter had changed. It was nervous now, unsure. They looked at Anya, who stood quietly behind Elias, her expression unreadable. One man muttered, "We're just joking." "No need to get angry." Elias didn't move. "We're going home." There was something so calm and certain about his voice that even the cowhands realized they had gone too far. They stepped aside, some looking away, some pretending they didn't care anymore. Elias and Anya walked to the wagon without looking back. Once they were on the road, Anya remained silent. The wind blew lightly, carrying dust across the empty fields. After several minutes, she finally spoke. "You defended me." Elias kept his eyes on the road. "I should have done it sooner." "You acted with courage," she said softly. "You were steady. That matters." He took in a slow breath, still feeling the pounding in his chest. "I didn't like seeing them treat you that way." Anya watched him for a moment, her expression softening. "Where I come from, people compete for strength. They fight for it, show it, use it. No one ever stood in front of me with quiet courage. No one ever chose to protect me with calm instead of loudness." Elias swallowed gently. "I just wanted you to feel respected, she said. "Because of you?" For the first time, Elias felt something shift inside Anya, not just trust, but something deeper, something like admiration. It warmed him more than the afternoon sun. But the real test came days later, when danger hit the ranch. A wildfire sparked in the distant hills, carried quickly by a hot wind. Elias saw the smoke rising far away, but he knew how fast fire could travel across dry grass. By late afternoon, the wind pushed the flames closer to their land. Anya smelled the smoke first. She dropped the bucket she was carrying. "Elias," she said, pointing toward the hills. "Fire." Elias felt cold fear climb through him. He had dealt with small fires before, but this one looked big. They had only hours before it reached the ranch. They didn't waste time. Elias raced to bring the animals to the safer side of the pasture. Anya helped, guiding frightened horses and calves with calm but urgent movements. Together, they built a fire break by digging a shallow trench and clearing dry brush. Elias worked fast, sweat dripping down his face, but even then, Anya worked faster, yet the fire kept closing in. When the flames grew near the far fence, one young bull panicked and ran straight toward the burning area. Elias chased after it, calling loudly. The bull didn't stop. It crashed into a broken section of fence. Trapping itself, Elias tried to pull the animal free, but the heat from the fire pushed closer. Smoke filled the air. His eyes burned. His lungs ached. Anya saw him struggling and sprinted forward. She didn't hesitate. She lifted part of the broken fence by herself, while Elias guided the terrified animal away. Together, they led it to safety. Coughing and exhausted but determined by the time the fire finally passed. Leaving a strip of blackened land, the house and barn were safe. Most of the animals were shaken but unharmed. Elias and Anya leaned against the water trough, breathing hard. Smoke stained their clothes. Dirt covered their hands. But they were alive. The ranch was alive. Elias turned to her, still catching his breath. "We did it," she whispered. Together, she looked at him differently now, as if seeing him for the first time, not just as a quiet rancher, but as someone who stood with her in danger, who didn't run, who didn't freeze. "You have courage," she said. "A quiet kind. The strongest kind." Elias felt warmth rise to his face. No one had ever spoken to him like that, and in that smoky, exhausted moment, as the wind cooled the burned earth and the sky darkened into evening, something unspoken grew between them, something deep, steady, and real. Days passed after the fire, and slowly life on the ranch began to return to normal. The air still smelled faintly of smoke, and the burned patch of land reminded them of how close they had come to losing everything. But every morning, when Elias and Anya stepped outside, they felt grateful to see the house standing, the barn roof unburned, and the animals grazing safely. Their teamwork had saved the ranch, and in the quiet moments that followed, their bond grew deeper in ways neither of them had expected. The town soon heard about the fire. They heard how Elias and Anya had fought it together, how they guarded the animals and never gave up. People who once whispered about the odd couple now spoke with respect, though some were too proud to admit it out loud. Still, attitudes began to change. When Elias went to buy supplies, a few men nodded to him politely. Others avoided eye contact, embarrassed by how they had treated him earlier. One morning, Elias and Anya rode into town to get new fence posts. The general store owner, a kind older man named Mr. Callan, stepped forward with a smile. "Heard you two saved the whole ranch," he said. "That fire was moving fast." "You did well," Elias nodded shyly. Praise always made him uncomfortable, but today it felt different. It felt earned. Anya stood beside him, calm and steady. Mr. Callan looked at her with new respect. "You must be strong as a mule," he said kindly. "Elias is lucky to have someone like you." Anya shook her head. "We are lucky to have each other." Elias felt warmth spread through him. Her words were simple, but they meant more than she realized as they walked through town. A few people offered thanks or small smiles. Others simply stepped aside, giving them space. No one mocked or whispered anymore. The fire had changed the land, but it had also changed how people saw them. On the way back home, the sky turned a soft shade of gold. Anya held the reins while Elias sat beside her, watching the fields slowly roll past. He glanced at her quietly. "You didn't have to say that," he said. "About us being lucky." "It was the truth," she replied, keeping her eyes on the path. "I choose my words carefully." He smiled a little. "I know." The next weeks passed peacefully. They worked side by side, repairing the burned fence line, planting new grass seed, and making sure the animals felt safe again. Anya lifted the heavy posts while Elias hammered them into the ground. She steadied the planks while he nailed them. Together, they rebuilt what the fire had taken. Some evenings, after the day's work was finished, they sat outside and watched the sun go down. Elias found himself sharing more stories from his childhood moments. He had never spoken about before because no one had ever asked. Anya listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. She told him about her home, Tuaboat, the snow-covered forests, the long winters, and the nights her family gathered around warm fires. Her voice always softened when she spoke about the past, even when the memories were difficult. One evening, as they sat on the porch, Anya said quietly, "I came here hoping for a peaceful life. I did not expect to find someone who saw me beyond my strength." Elias looked at her, surprised. "You think I see you like that?" She nodded. "Most people look at me and only see what I can carry or how loud I can be. You see the rest." Elias swallowed gently. "I see someone who is brave, kind, and patient. Someone who makes this house feel like a home." Anya's eyes softened, and for a moment she looked away as if holding back emotion. "No one has spoken to me like that," she admitted. Their quiet moment was interrupted by a soft breeze, carrying the smell of fresh grass. But even as the wind passed, the warmth between them remained as summer stretched on. The ranch once again became a place of life and movement. New calves were born, the fields turned green, and the days were filled with steady work. Over time, Elias and Anya formed a rhythm, a silent understanding of when one needed help, when one needed space, and when a small smile or gentle word could lighten the day. But something else grew between them, slowly and naturally. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't forced. It came from long days of working together, from protecting each other, from seeing each other's real selves. It came from simple things: shared meals, shared struggles, shared hopes. One afternoon, while repairing a section of fence near the creek, Anya paused and leaned lightly against a post. Elias looked up from his work and noticed the thoughtful expression on her face. "Elias," she said, her voice calm, "my people have a saying. They say that two people become partners not because they are the same, but because they choose to walk the same road." He set down his hammer and wiped his hands on his trousers. "Do you think we're walking the same road?" She stepped closer, her eyes gentle. "I think we are, and I hope we continue." Elias felt something warm spread in his chest, deeper than anything he had felt before. He nodded slowly. "I want that too." There were no big speeches, no dramatic declarations, just a simple truth shared between two people who understood each other. But the moment that changed everything came later that week. The sky was turning purple as evening approached. The burned fence line was almost completely repaired, and Elias was fastening the last piece of wire. Anya stood beside him, watching the sunset cast long shadows across the field. The light touched her face, softening every strong feature. After he tied the final knot, Elias stepped back, dusting his hands. "There," he said, "the last piece is finally done." Anya didn't look at the fence. She looked at him. "Elias," she said softly, "I want to tell you something." He nodded, heart beating a little faster. "When I first arrived," she began, "you looked at me with surprise, maybe even fear. I was not sure if you wanted me here." She paused gently. "But then I saw how you worked, how you listened, how you treated me with respect even when others did not. And after the fire, I saw your true heart." Elias felt his breath catch. "My heart?" "Yes," she said. "You stood in front of me without shouting. You protected me without trying to prove you were stronger. You fought the fire with me without stepping back. Your courage is quiet, Elias, but it is stronger than any loud voice." He felt warmth rise in his cheeks. No one had ever spoken about him like that. Then Anya said something that made his heartbeat stop for a moment. "When I told you I would take everything you can give, I was not speaking about strength or work." She took a slow breath. "I meant your kindness, your loyalty, your life beside mine. I wanted all of that, and I still do." Elias stood silently, overwhelmed by her honesty. For a long moment, he couldn't find any words. Then he stepped closer to her, not boldly, but with steady courage. "Anya," he said softly, "I don't know fancy words, and I'm not great with talking, but I know this. I want a life with you. Not because you came here by letters. Not because you needed a new home, but because of who you are." Slowly, she reached out and touched his hand. His fingers closed around hers naturally, as if they had always belonged there. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the sky in deep colors. The air grew cool, but neither of them moved. From that moment, their marriage was no longer a simple arrangement. It was a partnership built on respect, trust, and quiet strength. The town saw the change. Some people nodded at them kindly. Others whispered with curiosity, but it didn't matter. Elias and Anya walked through life side by side, their steps steady and sure. Their home was no longer silent. It was filled with gentle conversation, shared work, warm smiles, and peaceful nights. The empty spaces were gone. In their place grew a life shaped by two hearts, learning to care for each other. And though their beginning had been unusual, their journey became a true story of understanding of two very different souls choosing each other. Again and again, every day.